Hi, so this week we get to dive inside the computer. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually ever opened up a computer and looked inside. It's a little hard to do with laptops. You can't really do that without, well, unless you know what you're doing. But if you can get your hands on an old computer, definitely pull the case off and take a look at all the pieces and see if you can identify what they are, especially after reading the chapter in computer concepts this week, because that'll really help you identify things like hard drives and cables and sound cards and RAM and processors and motherboards and all these pieces of hardware that make up the computer that make it all work together. So one of the things that I find really interesting is this thing right behind me. Do you know what that is? Kind of looks like, well, if you're old like me, that kind of looks like a record player, right? See if I can get on the right side of it so you can see it. There we go. So it sort of looks like a record player because it's got the arm and it's got a disc. And normally you don't get to see inside of this. It's a hard drive. And one of the things that the chapter will talk about is how the hard drive is magnetic and how the memory all works on it. And so it spins around really fast and it accesses all your data. I've got some videos that show you, one of my favorite videos will show you how a hard drive works. And the very first thing it talks about is it compares it to something like an airplane flying around the world at the height of flying right over a football field, I think, looking for a blade of grass and how fast it does that. It's really amazing how the technology works. So let's take a quick look at what we're doing this week. If we go into week 8, you're going to see a bunch of resources, but I'm trying something new. Well, let's see if I can get to week 8 here. Here we go. I'm trying something new and I want you to let me know if it works or not, or if it's useful for you. So I have the video of what we're doing this week and I have the checklist. So of course you should definitely always read the checklist, read those things, the getting started things. But what I put up here this time was a playlist. I made a YouTube playlist of all the different videos because I always have a lot of videos. So all the different videos I showed you kind of in order of how they're presented on the checklist. And I'm going to try to add this video to that playlist when I get done. So it's not there quite right yet because I'm making the video. Anyhow, that way you can just listen to everything straight through without having to click a bunch of links. So you let me know how that works. I've never done that before, but I think it'll be interesting. So, two of the things that I put, or the two things that I put in the think area, people don't think much about how computers are made, like the actual physics and chemistry and mechanical engineering and everything of how a computer is made. And so, this first video's got the incredible chemistry powering your smartphone because there's lots of interesting elements in your computer. Now, this says your smartphone, but you know, right, that your smartphone is just a pocket sized computer. It's actually really a powerful computer. And so the next one is the self assembling computer chips of the future. And boy, doesn't that bring up some interesting issues because we're hitting on this thing called Moore's Law, which stated, and I believe it was from back in the 50s, and it stated that basically the power of your computer would double every year and a half to 2 years. And that's held true, totally true since Moore brought it up. But what we're finding now is we're actually hitting the limits of how small you can get. And so we have to come up with some other ideas. And we're going to actually talk about that when we talk about computer history in a few weeks. We're going to go from way back to like carrier pigeons all the way forward to quantum computing. It's quite a range in 1 week. But anyhow, this video will talk a little bit about that. And then in the learn section, and I put these in order of kind of how things happen, sort of. So the first one's inside your computer. Just what are all those pieces and parts, right? So if you watch that and then you open up an old computer, you should be able to identify some stuff. The second one is the computer boot process. And when your computer boots up, what happens is everything turns on. But between the time you push the power button and you look at the screen, a lot of stuff happens. So that video, that short video kind of walks you through all of those details. It's really quite interesting. And then how do hard drives work? That's the one I was just talking about. How computer memory works, because computers also have short-term and long-term memory like we do. Like we have short-term memory, right? You can only remember Like if I said a set of random things, red, blue, cereal, window, 9 light bulb, microphone. And I said like 10 things. You'd have a hard time remembering all that unless you made it into a story or something. So that's your short-term memory. And then your long-term memory is things that you remember for a long time. Well, your computer has that too. It's short-term memory is called RAM, random access memory. And that's when you like copy something to copy and paste it. Okay, that's all in short-term memory because when you turn off your computer, it goes poof, right? And so anyhow, that video talks about that. This next one I thought you'd find really interesting because people talk about megabytes and gigabytes and terabytes and yottabytes and petabytes and there's all kinds of weird bytes. But what does that all mean? And so I like this video. I looked at a couple of different ones and she uses Legos, so that's always a win, and compares those so you have a visual. But something that I wanted to share with you also was a graphic that my husband made up several years ago. And let me stop the share here for just a minute. Let me make sure I get the right other video up or the other image up for you. I should have put it all on the same screen. And then we will explain what that looks like. Hmm. I seem to be having a technical difficulty, so I don't know if you can see it or not. Let me try it one more time. So I've got this here. And then I'm going to go here and share the screen. There we go. That's what you may have seen that already, but it wasn't showing up on my screen. So now if we were in class, I'd actually bring in all of this stuff, but we're not in class. So I'll just have to show you a picture. So back in the olden days, if you might remember 5 1/4 inch floppy, it didn't hold very much. It held 360 kilobytes. And so if you were trying to put that in tangible and physical stuff, that might be like a teaspoon of sugar. And if you have a flash drive, most flash drives have way more than this, but just for comparison, we used a 1 gigabyte flash drive. Okay. So that would be roughly equivalent to roughly 4 gallons of water. So the flash drive to the floppy drive is like 4 gallons of water to a teaspoon of sugar. You can see how much more space it holds, and it's so much smaller. And now, if you jump up to an external hard drive, a 1 terabyte hard drive, which now is kind of small, but again, trying to keep the same ratios here, a 1 terabyte hard drive would be similar to like having almost 66 55-gallon drums. You know, the big drums that you've probably seen them, 55-gallon drums. Anyhow, so 55 water bottles would fit in one drum, and we could put 65 drums worth of information on a terabyte drive. So really is quite a difference. And this just gives you, I like this little video here, or this little graphic here. It just gives you an example of, bit to byte to kilobyte, kind of the scale of things: gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, exabyte, zettabyte, yottabyte. At some point, I think they're just making this stuff up. I'm never quite sure. So anyhow, so that's the difference between several different types of sizes. And hopefully you'll find that interesting. Now, let me go back to our website for just a minute and show you what we're doing for the week, like the do part. There's a couple of different things, but there's something in particular I need to point out to you. So kind of some of the usual things. It's a little bit of a light week because you have a project that's due at the end of or at the end of this week from last week that you'll do next week. So it kind of stretches over 3 weeks. Anyhow, so we're going to keep doing the let's tweet. I'm going to have you do a week 8 insight like we did in week 6. You'll have week 9's Zoom discussion sign up times. But then let's look at your presentation project. And so I moved this tile from last week to this week. I thought it would be a little too confusing to have to go hunt around for it, since this is the week that you need to upload stuff. So it's the same tile. I made a couple of modifications to it, but don't go looking for the one last week. This is the one you need to use. And so the assignment specifications are there. Please make sure you read over the specifications to make sure you include all the different things. There's not a ton of them, but you want to make sure you have the right number of slides and you want to have the right elements so I can check those off. So to submit it, you're going to do 2 parts. So part one, I want you to share your Google Slides with me. Share it with me and edit permission, okay, so that I can make comments or help you out if needed. But then also share it so that anyone with a link can view. Because if you share it out to Twitter, you need to make sure to have that link, okay, that anyone can view. There is a link here that tells how to download your slides as a PDF, all right? And then there's also, so you're going to upload your PDF also. And then part two, remember we talked about in Zoom about making a practice video. And so you're going to come into Zoom just like I'm doing now. You're going to do a slide share just like I'm doing now. Give your whole talk just like I'm doing now. Record it. And then when you exit Zoom, download it. You're going to take that file. Now you can use something else if you want to, but that's the quickest, easiest, um, least stressful way to do it because we've already been in Zoom. Some of you have already shared screens and breakout groups and things. And so if you need some help with that, definitely contact me by the end of the, before the end of the week. So you're going to download that. If your file is too big to upload to the form, and I'll go to the form in just a minute. If the file is too big to upload to the form, what you want to do is make sure that you upload it to either YouTube or your Google Drive, just like you did for the 2-minute intro video. And then make sure if you do it to Google Drive, you set it to anyone with the link can view. Okay. So read those instructions carefully. Make sure that you're paying attention. Okay, let's take a look at the form. So when you click the link to the form, just so you're familiar with it, it'll pull this up and it will ask you to log in with your email address, put your name, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a section for the Google Slides. So this is where you'll put the URL, like the one that you share with anyone with a link can view. This is where you'll upload the PDF. And so you have to download it first. Make sure your file name is correct before you upload it. And so you click on upload, select files from your device. If the file is too big to upload, definitely just email it to me directly, but try to upload it through this form because that makes things a little easier. And then the video file upload section, same thing, presentation file upload. I think the setting is at 100 megabytes. So if it's over that, you probably will have to do the alternative method of YouTube or Google Drive, but it should be really short, so it shouldn't be very long. And then if this doesn't work, then put the URL here, like put the link where I can find the video either on Google Drive or YouTube. But this is only if you can't upload the video. You don't have to do both. So that's what we're doing this week. Hardware kind of doesn't sound like it could be that interesting, but really, if you understand the nuts and bolts of what's inside the computer, it's very powerful because then you realize when something doesn't work, you might have a clue as to what it is, and you can at least call somebody to help you. If not, figure it out yourself. There's lots of videos on how to do stuff with computer hardware. Anyhow, that's what we're doing for the week. So I hope you have a good week and let me know if you have any questions.